what exactly is the United States afraid of? This ship is part of what's called a carrier battle group. It consists of an aircraft carrier, cruisers, destroyers, scores of combat aircraft, and a multitude of long and short-range missiles and other weapons. It's so large, the entire thing requires roughly 10,000 military personnel to operate. The United States boasts a dozen carrier battle groups of this size. No other nation on Earth has one. The question is why?
We are absolutely keeping America safe. The world is so complex right now. There's so many threats and challenges to our national security. You can't meet them in Boston and Los Angeles. You have to go out to meet them to defend the country.
But for many, this idea of going out to meet these challenges is precisely the problem.
If you look at the period since 1990, over 20 years now, there really is a period of enormous and continuing American military activism in all parts of the world for all kinds of purposes. I find that troubling.
If you're withdrawing back to the continental United States and saying we're no longer going to be engaged in the world because it's too hard or it's too expensive, isolationism is a recipe for failure in the 21st century.
And yet another recipe for failure is economic calamity, and that puts funding squarely in the spotlight. In the fiscal year 2012, the United States government has $1.34 trillion to play with. Currently, $553 billion has been allocated to the defense budget. But as Washington has learned the hard way, winning hearts and minds doesn't come cheap. In other words, is this money well spent?
Heavens no. I mean, absolutely not. I'm all for strong defense. I'm all for having a very capable, well-resourced military that keeps America safe, that can prevent anything like 9/11. But the way we've gone about trying to prevent the recurrence of 9/11 is absurd.
But what about challenges at home? The economic dimension cannot be ignored. The U.S. military is a major domestic employer. The entire defense industry turns over billions upon billions of dollars every year, and the link between the strength of the American economy and the strength of the American military cannot be ignored. And critics are quick to point out the perils of such a symbiotic relationship.
There is, in a sense, a partnership. Probably goes too far to call it a conspiracy because it's wide open. But there's a partnership between members of Congress, the armed services, and large-scale defense contractors, all of whom benefit in different ways by maintaining very high levels of military spending.
And that's why, during times of economic peril, politicians often resemble cheerleaders.
You're the ones ensuring this alliance remains effective in meeting the challenges of the 21st century, from countering North Korea's nuclear program to building up ties of trade and investment that generate jobs back home, to promoting democracy and human rights. You do it all. You're the full package.
And of course, there's the matter of prestige, the projection of strength. Any drastic changes to American hard power will create a vacuum, and it's impossible to predict in today's world how that will be filled or by whom.
We can't just retreat to Fortress America, and bring up the drawbridge and hope to defend our international security interests by bringing all the troops home.
And thus, the cycle is endlessly perpetuated. Wars need funding. Funding creates jobs. Jobs strengthen the economy. So perhaps the most important question of all is whether geopolitical instability is the excuse rather than the justification. This is the essence of realpolitik.
It's not an empire in the old-fashioned sense, but I think that there was a clear desire, and is a clear desire, on the part of senior U.S. officials to want to ensure that the regimes that are in place are relatively deferential to the United States. They will pursue policies that are consistent with our policies, basically to put us in a position where we're going to be able to call the shots. And that's a form of imperialism.
Because with the global economy the way it is these days, imperialism is very good for business.